Tim Staudt, the veteran sportscaster. He's on the radio every day on 7:30 a.m. from 9 until noon. You can find him online, too, if you're outside the Lansing area. And he is the sportscaster, of course, from the NBC affiliate here in Lansing, and I presume was at perhaps or near the game, or at least has known Coach D'Antonio for a long time because he was an assistant coach here at Michigan State before getting the job 4 years ago. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Michael Patrick.
Well, I know you had to be as startled as the rest of us. I mean, Coach D'Antonio is thin as a rail, doesn't smoke, eats salads, lives a very disciplined life, sat down on the bench in the locker room Saturday night and said, "I'm having chest pains."
Well, even beyond all that is his demeanor is not a Class A personality at all. It's hard to picture him getting riled up much about anything. It's just not his personality. Bo Schembechler was a firebrand with something like chest pains and that. When Bo was at Michigan in 1969 in his first year and had his heart attack, that was almost a little bit more believable, even though he was younger than Mark at the time he had it. But it was a little easier to believe only because of his personality. And, of course, Mark's personality is far more laid back, plus the fact we had all seen him do a regular, normal press conference, and his activities during the evening were exactly what you would expect of him, knowing him. And as I say, he did his post-game, press conference just as normal as can be, and everything was right on time. And then he, began to feel poorly and told his wife, and from there, the trip to the hospital was a short one, and from there, we have the news from yesterday morning, and it's been quite a surprise, you're right.
You say that he's laid back. You know him. But to those of us who don't know him, even when I interview him from time to time, or anybody who watches on television, he doesn't appear to be laid back. He appears to be very intense.
Well, I wouldn't describe him as that, to be perfectly honest.
Really?
Judd Heathcote was intense. Tom Izzo was intense. That doesn't mean that, and I don't know how much of a personality plays in all that. I'm told he has no family history of this, but I'm also told that there are a lot of us could be walking around with one, I don't know about you, but, I take, medicine for cholesterol, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
A lot of people could be walking around with one blood vessel that's getting, clogged with plaque, and sooner or later, he might get a little shortness of breath or a little discomfort, and sooner or later they're going to find it, put a stent. My dad had a stent, a couple of stents put in during his lifetime. This is a new procedure, which is easy to do and is very effective in terms of treating heart disease. Heart disease is much more treatable today than what it used to be when Bo Schembechler was around 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, I'm just telling you my observation of his personality. I remember when he's under stress and duress, when I visited with him, it's very hard for him to get worked up to the point where he almost starts laughing about it a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have a temper. It's just that I don't see that the way I see it in other coaches.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you wonder about the duck. He looks placid on the water, but below the feet are moving 700 miles an hour there to paddle. And then you think about somebody like Urban Meyer, and you think about, like you mentioned, Bo Schembechler, who had a number of heart incidents, including one just before the Rose Bowl. And you begin to wonder if this coaching business is so intense that it brings on events like this. That was a thrilling finish, no doubt, to that Notre Dame game.
Well, it was a very long day for him. There's no question about that. And there is no question that the hours that these coaches put in, not just football either. Skip Prosser at Wake Forest died, the basketball coach, a couple of years ago. That left a huge mark on a lot of other coaches, including Tom Izzo. Urban Meyer's problem is not necessarily heart-related, but, it's certainly football-related.
Mm-hmm.
And once they figured out a way to kind of get a handle on it, he decided to return and do it. I do think one thing about all coaches that get into it at this level, they understand the hours, they deal with them. And yet Tony Dungy, when he was coaching in the NFL, was absolutely determined that at 5:30 at the end of the day for other people, he was going to send his coaches home. He did not want them working themselves into a frazzle so that they could barely exist. And he had quite a career, but he certainly is the exception to that. You even find high school coaches today that have to spend a year doing this, and during the season it's just night and day. I think most of them accept that, and some of them obviously can handle it better than others. whether that's a factor or not with Mark D'Antonio. I talked with a number of doctors yesterday who have a mixed opinion of that one way or the other. One doctor I know who's very good as a cardiologist told me he doesn't think football had anything to do with it. He could have had any other job, and sooner or later he would have had that discomfort, would have had to get it taken care of. The only difference is because he's in the public eye, it's a big story because of his job, as opposed to, let's say, if he was a salesman.
What do we know about Don Treadwell, the offensive coordinator, who will be assuming the coaching duties this weekend, and who knows how much longer?
Well, Michigan State is very careful to announce that he is just kind of overlooking the day-to-day operation, but he is not an interim head coach at any stretch of the imagination, because they've all been with Mark for all the years that he was at Cincinnati and now at Michigan State. There's only one coach who hasn't been with him for the last 7 or 8 years. So they are really not. They're saying that there's no head coach, there's no interim head coach. Treadwell, if it gets to one last person who the buck stops with, Treadwell's the guy. But they're all going to do exactly what they've been doing, and they wanted to make that very, very clear that there is no interim head coach in any sense of the word. So I think, the special teams guy will make all those calls, and the defensive line coach will do all of what he does, and so on and so forth. The difference is there just isn't one guy who will be overseeing it all in Mark D'Antonio. The bigger question, of course, is when is he going to come back? Everything I've heard is 2 to 3 weeks if everything goes well. And yet Mark Collis told me, I asked Mark Collis directly last night, I said, will he be back by the Michigan game? They're dodging that completely because they're unsure as to what the doctors are going to say several days from now after he's had a chance to kind of adjust to his surroundings. But I think they're going to err on the safe side and make sure that he's away from all this until they're completely confident that he can resume his normal duties.
Speaking of Michigan, I heard you say on your radio show last week that Michigan playing Massachusetts, they should be embarrassed. Massachusetts is like a high school team, and that Denard Robertson will be out of the game after a couple series. It didn't quite go that way for the Wolverines, and the story is being painted that they dodged a bullet.
Well, the danger is if you play a school like that, which is a Division II school, okay, and they only played them because they couldn't find anybody else to go to Ann Arbor. If you do that and you're forced into that, you have a situation whereby people are never, ever around here going to forget the name Appalachian State. And frankly, it got down to, I watched a lot of the game, Michael, and the game plan, of course, was to blow them out. I think Michigan, frankly, had a tremendous letdown from Notre Dame. I think that's inevitable. And plus the fact they played a good team. I mean, Massachusetts was a lot better team than what Delaware State offered up here. I don't know that they were in the same league as Appalachian State. They didn't have the same speed, but for the caliber of play they were, that was Massachusetts Super Bowl. Now, that said, Michigan's got a lot of concerns off this game as well. When you let a Division II team go up and down the field the way they did for the remainder of the schedule, Michigan is clearly would be the first to tell you they got to shore up what they do defensively if they want the fairy tale season to continue. I think they'll beat Bowling Green this Saturday, but after that they have to go to Indiana. If they play defense the way they did against Massachusetts, that game's going to be tough for them to win.
I know that we all know a bit about Brian Kelly, having coached at Grand Valley State and Central Michigan University, and you cover Notre Dame very closely because you have a child goes to school there, as I understand. And that look on his face when Mark D'Antonio ran that fake field goal on Brian Kelly's face, to me said, well, you got to give it to the guy. He really got me there. I mean, it was that kind of smile, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's going to have to develop, obviously, some really thick skin because when you lose games like that at Grand Valley and Central Michigan and Cincinnati, it's one thing. But now he's lost 2 games at Notre Dame to major schools that his team, played well enough in a lot of aspects to win but couldn't quite get it done. I mean, I thought Notre Dame, played much better against Michigan State, frankly, than I figured that it would. It was right there to win the game at the end. But for one play that was a weird play, that's another loss. And in Notre Dame, with that kind of exposure, it makes it just that much tougher.
We'll be listening to you at 9 until noon on 7:30 a.m. in the Lansing market, watching you on the NBC affiliate here and finding you online too. Tim Staudt, veteran sportscaster, very close to the Michigan State program.